is going to be about increasing abundance without increasing any extra work. Because obviously, if you want like twice as much in your garden, then you go plant a garden twice the size. But we're going to look at ways to increase abundance without having to do that. Now, I've got the points listed up here, 1 through 5. Went ahead and written them down just in case we get a little off topic questions and I don't get through all 5 of them. And feel free at any point to ask questions. Just like throw your hand up in the air so I can see you, and then go ahead and ask your question. So the first method of increasing abundance without increasing any extra work is focusing on the soil biology. If you start looking at your soil as like your main resource, right? Everything you do focuses on the soil. Food is a byproduct of healthy soil conditions. An example of the focusing on soil biology is I have a garden in East Texas where it's guaranteed drought for at least 2 months every summer. I planted sweet potatoes earlier that spring. I established a ground cover first, focused on the soil biology with that. And then I planted sweet potatoes in, I watered them in, and then that was the last time I watered my sweet potatoes until it was time to harvest. And had a fantastic harvest because you focus on the soil biology first, and then everything else is a byproduct of having good soil biology. Same thing when it comes to your grazing animals. Anybody who doesn't have enough forage, you might have too many animals, or you just might have the appropriate amount of animals, just not enough forage density. If you increase the soil biology there, you'll realize like, oh, I can increase my stocking density for this whatever size piece of property just by focusing on the biology first, doing proper grazing practices first. Every season that you graze correctly, you can increase forage density by 300% per season. So this pasture that might only be able to hold 2 steer right now, you can eventually build it up to a point where you're holding 6 steer. It's entirely possible. Another thing about soil biology is you can water far less often. Like that demonstration site in Texas, I watered everything in, and then that was the last time I watered, and just focused on the. Is this mic cutting in and out? Okay, maybe I'll just move my hand then. Is that better? Cool. So the soil, you can water far less often using that one garden site at the demonstration site in Texas. I watered it in, and then that was it. You also can worry less about weed pressure. So 2 different things you can do here. You can pick which weeds you want to grow by planting in your cover crop, or you change the soil biology enough so where weeds can no longer grow. What we view as weeds only grow in bacteria-dominant soils. Once you get to the fungi and the bacteria in a ratio of 1 to 1, that's whenever you've given succession over to like successional grasses, vegetables, things like that, the things that you actually want to grow. Did you have a question? No? Okay. Yeah, again, if you guys have any questions at any point, you're not interrupting, you're good to go. And then also with the pastures, the pasture application, and in the garden application, you'll have far less disease, you'll have far less issues. Fertility rates will go up with your breeding pairs if they have higher quality forage and everything. And the reason they have higher quality forage is because of the soil biology. Now, the whole reason we focus on soil biology is because that's how plants uptake nutrients, is through the proper soil biology. The salt-based fertilizers that we buy at the store, the way the plant soaks that up is that it rains or you water, then that salt dissolves into the water, and then it forces that plant to suck up that nutrition or lack of nutrition through it soaking up the water. That's not how plants handle that. The best relationship for your plants is actually the plant, looks at the sun, photosynthesis happens, it shoots down that sugar down into the soil, and then that sugar goes and feeds the microbes. In exchange for that soil, the microbe gets a grocery list for the plant. I moved my hand. I think that's why I cut out again. It has to go get what's on that grocery list, and then it brings it back to the plant, but it can't make a direct transaction between what that microbe has, that simple microbe has, and what the plant needs. It has to get eaten by its predator. And now you have the full soil food web. And once you have that nutrition cycling going, it's an on-demand system for your plants. So as long as your plants are there, they're going to be feeding the organisms, and those organisms are going to go and get what that plant needs, which creates a very, very resilient system. We're mimicking what you guys see in nature to grow our gardens, our orchards, whatever it may be. Like this forest behind you, you can see there's a whole lot growing in that forest. There's even food being produced in that forest. And there's nobody over there maintaining it. We can copy and paste that in our own food systems. So soil biology, definitely a high point of focus. Also, I realized before we move on here, we also need to define what a harvest is. Most people think of like harvest as whatever they pull out of the garden, but you have to first subtract the amount of energy you put into it. So for round numbers, let's say I put in 5,000 calories to over the entire course of the gardening season. I put 5,000 calories into maintaining, planting, starting the seedlings, whatever it may be, the full harvest, the maintenance. Every time I water, that's more calories, things like that. And then at the end of the season, I end up getting 10,000 calories out of my system. My yield is 5,000 calories because you take what you get out of the system, subtract what you put into the system. It's just like a profit. That's your overall yield. Until you hit that yield point, you're not even breaking even. You're paying that energy debt. So we need to look at things that yield more per calorie, or we need to look at ways to reduce the amount of calories I'm putting into a system. And calories is just an easy way everybody can understand. You can think of it as like oil or gas or fertilizers or biocides, anything like that. Those are all calories that are going into the system. So the more of those you can eliminate, the higher your yield is going to be. A quick little anecdote about yields. When I was staying at Jeff Lawton's farm over in Zaytuna, or his farm, Zaytuna Farm in Australia, he was explaining to me his coffee production. So he could build a full-blown unnatural habitat for his coffee trees and have 100% production from each individual tree, or he could take his coffee trees and then plant them in the canopy of another overstory tree, get 50% less production, but he can plant twice as many and get the same amount of overall production with less energy he's putting into a particular system. So you're increasing yield just by changing your method or changing your design of a particular system. Is that making sense to everybody? I know none of us around here grow coffee, so it's kind of unrelatable as far as that goes. But if he had the option to either build an unnatural habitat with 50% shade year round, or he could just plant it in his existing forests. Check out. Awesome. All right, so let's move on from soil biology to stacking functions. So has anybody heard of a tree guild before? A couple of you guys? Okay, so if I'm looking at planting, let's say 5 trees, I could plant those 5 trees and my only yield is going to come from those 5 trees. But wherever I plant those 5 trees, I'm going to have to conquer that particular area, right? I got to get it under control to a point where I can have control over it and I can grow what I want to grow in that particular system. So instead of just planting those 5 fruit trees, let's call them apples. Let's say there are 5 apple trees, right? What I could do to increase harvest is I could change the diversity of my apple trees. So this one is going to bloom earlier in the season. This one's going to have apples like midsummer. This next one is going to have apples that are just right after that one. So you can stagger your harvest and give you time to put away that harvest before things go bad. Or you could even do another apple tree where it's like, okay, this one doesn't even taste good until I store it for a year, like the Arkansas black apple. There's a very, very high storing apple right there. So you could stagger your diversity or increase your diversity and increase abundance that way. You also have 5 different varieties of apples, so you're also increasing resiliency towards particular pests. And then also particular soil conditions. There's some apple trees that do just fine with wet roots. There's other apple trees that do just fine with having dry roots, all those kinds of diversity. So not just diversity in fruit, but diversity in their overall benefits as well. So that's one way. Also, if I'm planting an apple tree, I might as well plant its support species. If I look in those trees over there, which permaculture all derives from observations of nature. So if I look at those trees over there, I notice that it's not just trees growing over there. There's like 7 total, or really 8 total layers to any forest. There's the overstory, there's the understory, there's the shrub layer, the bush layer, the vine layer, the ground cover layer, and the vining layer, as well as the fungal layer. Those are all opportunities to grow food. So if I plant a fruit tree right here, I now have 6 other opportunities to grow food in the exact same space. So what I do is I plant my tree first, because I'm going to measure everything else off that trunk of the tree. So I plant that tree, and then within the mulch ring of that tree, I'm going to plant, you could do daylilies and garlic. Daylilies are a good perennial potato alternative. And then garlic, everybody uses garlic for everything. So plant as much as you possibly can. And then just a little bit further out, I'm going to do a couple of comfrey plants, which all of my animals on the homestead can eat comfrey. It's classically known as knit bone in the South. There's a ton of there's a whole list of things that comfrey helps with. It helps with cuts, helps with wounds. You can eat it yourself. Careful Googling it, because once the Rockefeller Foundation figured out how to synthesize the active ingredient called allantoin, they started demonizing the plant, saying, oh, it'll create liver toxicity and all that stuff. Liver toxicity is only shown up in laboratory conditions whenever it's used outside of the entire plant, because the alkaloids within comfrey that would cause liver toxicity and liver damage are also destroyed by other compounds in the plant. So just eat the plant and you'll be good to go. Or use the plant in a whole form. You can make salves, you can make extracts, all kinds of stuff. I can use it as a green mulch. There's a ton of uses for comfrey, but that's going to act as my shrub layer, and that's just right outside the mulch ring. Also, once you have one comfrey plant, you never have to buy comfrey again, because you can turn that one plant into 80 plants the first time you split it. So immediately outside that comfrey, I'm going to have fruit bushes, and this is going to take care of my bush layer, right? And those fruit bushes might be blueberries, they might be goji berries, it could be gomi berries, whatever kind of fruit berry works well in your area, plant just outside the comfrey layer. Everything is going to be tight, everything is going to be compact, because we're mimicking that forest over there, which grows perfectly without any human intervention. And then just outside the shrub layer, we could start getting into our ground cover, which the ground cover could take place anywhere you don't already have something planting. But that ground cover could be strawberries. So not only everything is growing food. And then as your tree matures and gets taller and stronger, then you can start introducing the vining layer. If you introduce that too early, then it's going to pull the tree down, and then you're going to have two dead things. If you wait, then you can plant the vine, and then the tree will be strong enough. But they could be something as great like grapes. It could be muscadines. It could be cold hardy kiwi. That works well all the way up to Kansas. I think 6A is the cutoff point with cold hardy kiwi. I could be wrong on that. The ones that I've checked, 6A was the cutoff point. It could be it could be really anything. If you're in a warmer climate, you can even do perennial yams that can climb up your tree. And kind of like comfrey with perennial yams, you're never going to harvest it all, so you're never going to get rid of it. As long as you leave a remnant in the soil, it's going to keep on growing back. And that's all just in the same spot. It's no extra space. It's no extra maintenance. You're already going out there to harvest, so now you just have to go out there to harvest a little bit more often, which is an awesome concept. And I'm not using any more space than I already would have just by planting those 5 fruit trees. So if you have a full-blown orchard, your orchard could become 6 times more productive just by utilizing all these different layers. You're stacking functions with this particular system. Now let's look at it from a grazing perspective. So let's say I have 5 steer, and I'm a little bit under my stocking density for the property. I could fit a little bit more. They're not really keeping up with the grass growth. Instead of doing another steer, I might not have enough pasture to justify another steer. So I could break that steer down into fractions and introduce and titrate with sheep. And I can keep them, as long as the temperament of everything is, working, then you can keep the sheep in there with your cows. And instead of moving 2 different systems of sheep and cows, I'm now moving one system all at the same time. And then I could stack that function even more, and then have chickens 3 days behind the sheep and the cows. If I have my chickens 3 days behind, they're there to disrupt the parasite cycle of my other ones, which then increases my abundance and increases my yield, because that's less energy I have to put into worming those particular animals. This is all methods of creating abundance with no extra work. In fact, you tend to increase abundance when you step back a little bit and let the natural systems take over for you. We don't need to be nearly as involved as a lot of us are with any particular system. So stacking functions. Think of things that you can put along with another system. Think of systems that you can combine where they mutually benefit each other, and it's one system you're already taking care of. So now you have the benefit of 2 systems, but you have also the benefit of maintaining one system with that overall system, right? Is this making sense to everybody? You guys have any questions? Cool. All right. So now let's get into zoning, which is proper location for everything, right? So if I have something like let's say I have my house site, and if I have something like a garden, which is going to need, typical garden is going to need maintenance at least twice a day. I'm going to water at the very least in the morning, water very little in the evening. Should I put that garden 200 yards to the east away from the house? Or do I want to put that garden literally right at the front door? So every time I leave the house, it forces me to interact with that garden. That's the idea behind zoning, is the things that you interact with the most needs to be close to the house. This is why I recommend like greenhouses, high tunnels, things like that should be closer to your house than your annual outdoor garden. The reason I say that is because the high tunnel and the greenhouse are artificial systems. So if I am not there, this system isn't going to work, or unless I've automated a system, this system is going to fail. It's all being piggybacked off me. The outdoor garden is slightly more resilient, or a lot more resilient than your greenhouse or your high tunnel, because worst case scenario, nature just takes over that particular system and takes care of it for me. So the greenhouse, which needs to be looked at a little bit more often than your garden, needs to be closer to your house, preferably even attached to your house. I don't know if anybody's seen the Earthship design, but the whole south-facing, if you're in the northern hemisphere, the whole south-facing side of that property or that house is actually a greenhouse, which is growing food in zone 0. There's 5 overall zones. Or I guess technically 6. There's zone 0, which is the house that you're living in. There's zone 1, which are things and areas that you encounter multiple times a day. So like whatever's between you and your house, or you and your house and your car, I would say is typically zone 1. Zone 2 are things that you see at least once a day. Zone 3, very, very intermittent. Zone 4, you're taking like an intentional trip to zone 4 for a particular something. And zone 3 and zone 4 are interchangeable, because I might have pasture that's zone 4 for right now until my animals rotate over there, and then it becomes zone 3. So they're kind of interchangeable. Zone 5 is just dedicated wilderness. Like you're going out there to go look at stuff. You're observing, you're interacting, you're harvesting, whatever it is. But zone 5 is full-blown wilderness. And it's also the furthest from your house. So I don't want to put my garden or my chickens, things that need constant attention, all the way out there, because that's more calories that's going into the system every time I go and maintain that system, right? Because remember, we're looking for the least amount of calories going into a system with the maximum amount of calories coming out of the system. So things that need more attention, put closer to your house. Things that need less attention can go further away from your house, with the exception of potentially grazing animals. So next one, less annuals. Because annuals are something that you have to plant year after year, over and over again, sometimes multiple times a year, depending on how many growing seasons you have. So the better route to go would be, try to trade out some of your annuals for things that you can plant once and harvest over and over again. I love fruit trees. I think it should be a good goal for everybody to have 5 fruit trees per individual of your house. That would fix a lot of food issues in America right now, is if everybody had 5 fruit trees. That's a lot of freaking food, especially if you did just full-blown apples for each person, you can easily survive off 5 fruit trees worth of apples all year. Not that that's a very comfortable existence, but it's doable. You would get tired of apples pretty quickly. But think of the perennials that you can substitute in for your annuals. There's perennial carrots. They take about 2 years to grow, so use your annuals to get you to that point. There's perennial yams, like that climbing yam I was talking about before. That's another sweet potato alternative that's also perennial. Think of even annuals that you can harvest and then immediately replant while you're harvesting. Potatoes in some climates can be that. So you can go through, harvest your potatoes, leave a potato behind every time you harvest one, and then just go harvest those whenever they grow up the green, and then the green dies back, and then you go and harvest. It could be a continuous cycle. And if you took care of your soil biology, you don't have to worry about any nutrient depletion within your soil. The soil biology is like, if you get nothing else, focus on the soil biology. That's like a never-ending hack. It's a permanent fix as long as you don't create compaction or anaerobic conditions. Tilling creates compaction. Walking on your raised beds a little bit too much creates compaction. Overgrazing in a particular paddock creates compaction. Anaerobic conditions is caused by too much water, which I would say that's not the biggest cause of anaerobic conditions. The absolute biggest cause is applying salts to your soil. They're just hidden. They're hidden as fertilizers. They're hidden as preservatives. They're hidden as even like pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, things like that. Those are all salts to some extent, and those create anaerobic conditions. So as long as you avoid those, soil biology is a permanent fix. And then once you have fixed the soil biology and you start focusing more on perennials, then that's like a system you no longer have to worry about. You don't have to go take care of it. It's already it's already being taken care of via the soil biology and the fact that it's going to grow year after year after year after year. So next one is microclimates. So microclimates are handy because they can increase your growing season or decrease your growing season, which both are beneficial. So let's talk about a hot microclimate first, right? So I live in Texas, and I have a south-facing brick wall. That is going to be a hot microclimate. That microclimate right there can increase my growing season, spring and fall. Like I can plant earlier in the spring and I can keep growing later in the fall just by planting right up close to that brick wall, and I can increase growing season for like 2 to 6 weeks, which is like depending on what I'm growing, is like a whole nother harvest that I can take advantage of. So I can start my tomatoes earlier on that. I can grow subtropical varieties because I'm in a Mediterranean climate. I'm right on that edge of Mediterranean to subtropical. I can grow subtropical varieties. I can increase my growing zone with that particular spot just by picking a hot or really, really hot microclimate. And in return, as those things get bigger, because I planted some subtropical trees over there, as those things get bigger, they're going to cover that south wall, reducing the amount of heat that's actually entering my house. So it's a win-win in that scenario. Now, in the government easement drainage ditch, that's going to be a cold pocket. So how can I use that to my benefit? Let's say I live in a warm climate, and I want to plant this particular apple that needs X amount of chill hours, right? I can plant it in those cold pockets and increase my chill hours on that particular tree and get away with a colder climate apple tree just by placing it in a place that's going to collect cold more frequently than that south-facing wall is going to. Another microclimate that a lot of people can take advantage of is bodies of water. In the northern hemisphere, if you plant your peach trees, because peach trees are susceptible to late spring frosts, if you plant those peach trees on the north side of your pond, you will have a stable microclimate that'll protect it from weather fluctuations. So any early frost coming into the fall, it'll protect your trees. Any late frost coming in from the spring, it'll protect your trees. So using those bodies of water that have a high specific heat or a high specific temperature means it takes a lot of energy to change the temperature in that body of water. You're going to have a more stable climate. Use all of these systems to your benefit to increase abundance without having to increase any of the extra work. Nothing here really increased the work. It just focused your attention. So soil biology, the only extra work potential would be the making of compost. But tomorrow we'll go into like how you can have your chickens make compost for you and raise your chickens for free. So no extra work here. These stacking functions, there's no extra work here. You're just deciding where you're going to place the particular functions, right? The zoning, that's not any extra work. That's also a decision in placement. Like, okay, things that need more attention, I put closer to the house. The things that need less attention, I put further away from the house. The less annuals, more perennials. The only extra work is planting that perennial, but you're breaking even because you were going to plant the annual anyway. There might be some calories burned in just figuring out. There he is. We got Waldo over here. There might be some extra like calories burned in just and just figuring out what to plant instead of your annual, right? So just like mental calories, no big deal. You're on your computer or your phone anyway. Just go to a website and figure out what's what. And then microclimates. Again, no extra work. It's just a decision in placement. There's thought being put. There's correct ideas in the placement of your systems. That's where most homesteads fail. So I do permaculture consultations. So I've seen a ton of farms all over the United States. And the most common place that people fail is the placement of systems. And also getting way too many systems before they're ready. So like if you get a new piece of property, there's a correct order in which you should design that property. There's a debate between water or access first. I say both at the same time because sometimes your water can dictate your access. So doing in any like a pond, I can use a pond to cross a ravine. I can dam up that ravine, make it wide enough to drive over, and I now have access across to the other side of the ravine. And also I'm capturing water on the uphill side. So water and access first, and then your structures. A lot of people will get temporary housing, and then they'll get all their animal systems, and then they'll realize like, oh crap, I don't have any time to build the permanent housing. So now I'm going to get burned out and frustrated and sell the property and then quit. which you can avoid all that just by following the proper order of everything. And I'm not saying that happens every single time. If you were determined to do this, you're going to stick through it and finish it out. But proper design will mitigate some of these headaches. And then after structures, you get into earthworks. Or like, all right, if I live in the mountains, what flat spots do I need to create to make my job easier? Do I need to do any roads on this piece of property? Do I need to put in swales? Do I need to put in ponds after I got my main water established? Things like that. If you follow these correct steps, then you will have abundance at a faster rate. So, are there any questions? I went through that a little faster than I anticipated. Go ahead.
For a number of years, we've always tilled every year. What would be your recommendation to improve our soil biology without?
What were you tilling with? Tractor or just a tiller? Okay, so how do you fix your garden after tilling for a number of years, right? So the proper route I would go is like till it one more time just to shape your garden. So I would put garden beds on contour, which is like perfectly level elevation. So that way every time it rains, you're going to passively harvest water into the landscape. As long as you don't have slopes over 20 degrees. Do you live in Kansas? Then you're good. Yeah. I grew up here, so I can talk trash about it, how flat it is. Yeah, then you're good. But I would till it one more time, put all the beds on contour, and then I would immediately sow a cover crop. So if you're going into colder seasons, I usually like to do clovers. If you're going into warmer seasons, then I would do you could do a red clover, crimson clover, you could do buckwheat, cowpea, any number of things. But I would have the roots immediately occupy the soil structure and maintain that loose soil structure. Now, if you have a very hard compaction layer, let's say you were tilling 4 inches and you're creating a hard compaction layer 5 inches deep, one thing you could do to fix that is to go through with a yeoman's plow. You can rent it or you can buy it. If you buy it, then you're immediately in another business because then you can rent those services to other people. But you can take a yeoman's plow and you want to go downhill at a 2% grade towards your ridge line, which Kansas, do it on contour. So yeah, you would cut those yeoman trenches in on contour. Now, cool thing about a yeoman's plow is it's the only way to subsoil, mechanically subsoil without creating a compaction, or till without creating a compaction layer below it. It's the only method. So your chisel point plows, all these other, your rotary tiller, all these other tilling methods, all will create a compaction layer immediately underneath it, which limits your root penetration. So you want your roots to go as deep as possible. There's no lower limit to roots until you hit a compaction layer. That's your lower limit to roots. Yeoman's plow. Yep. YEOMAN''S. Yeoman's plow. Even if you misspell it, it'll still pop up. How do I know? Yeah. So yeah, that's the immediate steps that I would get to limit tilling in the future. Again, the only time I use tilling is whenever I need to shape something, and then after it's shaped, then I'm using roots to occupy that soil structure. And then if you're doing it on a larger scale, like you could get a no-till seed drill if you wanted to. Or you can even use like a jang seeder. I like those jang seeders. You can load up your hopper with seeds or seedlings, and then you just push it along your row, and you can set the depth, you can set the spacing, all that type of stuff. It's fantastic. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Next question.
What is a good resource for learning your cover crop?
So we just built a house. So like I tilled with a tractor to try to level it out. My plan is to build my garden right at my house. And there's companies out here that do cover crop seed mixes. And I learned about the Midwest cover crop tool, but I think that's based more for farming. But I did put down a cover crop mix, not really knowing what. I basically had like an 8-foot cover crop around my property. But my goal was, because it was dirt that had been dug up during construction, compounded around the house, to break it up to plant a cover crop. Learning what cover crops to use when I go to.
I can simplify it right now. Okay. So what I look for in a cover crop isn't specifically what it's going to do. Is it going to replace this nutrient in the soil? Is it going to do any of this? Because we focused on soil biology first. which the cover crop is helping with the soil biology. But I know as long as I get the right characters into the soil, all of that is going to be taken, whether it's like locking up toxins through medium and long chain carbonic acids just by the act of composting, or like just keeping the soil structure itself. I want something that is going to grow in that particular season and then also be easy to manage. So that's my criteria. As far as all the other specifics and stuff, I don't care, because it's feeding, no matter what the plant is, it's going to feed soil. It's going to feed exudates into the soil. So it's going to be feeding my microbes, which is all I want it to do. All the other specifications, is it easy to manage? Like, one reason I don't plant sun hemp is because like now I got some thick stalks that I got to cut through when I'm done with the sun hemp. So things like clover, which are very, very easy, I can go out there with my scythe, I can chop it all down, let it decompose in the ground. Things like buckwheat, things like cowpea. Cowpea is real cool because it's going to reseed itself in 2 weeks. That does really well in the summer, and it doesn't create a very high carbon stalk. And then that's another reason to look at your cover crops. Like, are you going to be mowing any of this for compost ingredients later? If so, what kind of nitrogen to carbon ratio are you wanting? Do you want something that's going to bring a lot of carbon to the equation, or do you want something that's going to bring a little more nitrogen to the equation? For me, it's really easy to find high carbon inputs. The low or the high nitrogen inputs are the ones that I prefer when it comes to a cover crop. Does that make sense? Does that simplify it? Whatever's going to grow in that season and easy to manage. There you go. All right, next question. Oh, right here. What's up, buddy?
Man? How's it going?
Oh, hi. I know this guy.
Yeah. Hey, so we're looking at a mountain property in Oklahoma, and it's really high clay, and it was a clear cut. So basically, a logging company went there, they clear cut good, like 18 acres of it. It's a 20-acre property. We're kind of circling around looking at buying it, but what's the best way to turn that high density clay soil, the red clay, into basically sheep field, like pasture space?
So I would say it's fairly easy. Would really, like, let's say it's just bare dirt that you're working with at first. One thing that I would do is just invest in round bales and roll out. I would do the Greg Judy method, where I roll out the round bale in front of the sheep, and then they're going to eat a third, they're going to poop on a third, and then they're going to leave a third. So it's increasing the organic matter within the soil. But also with the hay, it's like a 2-for-1 deal, because you bought animal feed and then you also bought plant seed at the same time. And that's a plant seed that you want your sheep to eat. So it's like a very efficient way to seed and increase germination rates in your fields. Now, I will give you a word of warning when it comes to buying logged land, is that you have your work cut out for you. Like, all the trees are gone, but you left that space of nature naked. Nature hates being naked, and usually what she's going to cover herself with is not going to be favorable to you. It's usually going to be thorny. Yeah, it's going to be viney. It's going to be thorny. It's going to be difficult to manage with, because it's there to serve a job. So that's its defense mechanism. It's like, hey, I'm over here working. Don't mess with me. I'm going to grow thorns, or I'm going to be high in cyanide. Like, so we're in Kansas. Burning is very, very popular. The successional plant, after you burn up all that phosphorus in your grass, are typically plants that are the pattern is that they're typically plants high in cyanide, to kill whatever's grazing it so they can replace the phosphorus in the pasture. So instead of burning, if we're looking to get rid of noxious weeds, we should focus on changing the overall biology of the soil. But with that, with a new growth forest or a fresh cut forest, there's going to be a lot of viney, thorny species that sheep do love to eat. So keep that in mind. But you're going to have to like manage that. Like, I would buy a full forested, even if it's a healthy, unhealthy forest, whatever it may be, up to 18 acres, than a clear-cut forest of 18 acres. Even though I have access to everything, all that 18 acres I have to address as soon as I get to the property. Whereas the wooded 18 acres, I can work at my own pace and clear as I want and conquer. Yeah, that works. Yep. Who's next? Oh, hold on. He's bringing a microphone. It's for the live stream.
Okay, I have two soil saver questions. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I know snowpack really helps with the fungal and the good stuff, right? But here in Kansas, we kind of hit or miss on snowpack. Yep. So if you were going to apply, if you maybe have procured it already, And would you go ahead and put it on, or would you go ahead and wait till spring?
So let me describe what
That's
soil
question
savers
one
is.
on it.
Okay, let's answer that. Let's do
Okay,
one at a
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So soil savers, it's a product. If you're unable to make compost, soil savers is the only product that I endorse, even a little bit. Everything else is literally garbage. We've tested it. We've looked at it under the microscope. Everything else is literally garbage. It's not like if you go and buy compost from the landscape yard, it's all garbage. Like the only reason I would take that is if they're paying me to fix it. That's the only time I would take that crap. Anything else, if you ever need to buy soil, buy cheap topsoil and then inoculate it with your own biology. Soil Saviors is a product with very unique bacteria that are kind of indestructible. They're called archaea bacteria or extremophiles, and they're found in very, very extreme locations. So even if you have a drought, even if you have like super wet temperatures, even if you have extreme heat, whatever it may be, they will thrive and survive no matter what. So you still need to focus on the fungal aspect of your soils, but Soil Saviors is still a really, really awesome product, especially if you're not good at making compost yet, or if you're unable to make compost. That's what I would go with. So that being said, I would still apply it in the fall, even if you're not getting snowpack. Just because you're getting cooler temperatures, you're getting, even if you get a little bit of snow, you're still going to be watering the microbes in the interim. There's less evaporation going on as well during the cooler months. So, and then it also will inoculate in time for your spring harvest or your spring planting. Second question.
Second one is probably going to be a weird one.
Do you know who the Ice Age farmer is?
I do. He's back.
He's back and he's on YouTube today.
So, and watching him on X, so you're aware of the Palantir and Ginkgo and the, okay, all those fun little nitrogen producing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would Soil Savior do anything for that? Because my understanding, and my best friend is a medical patent attorney, but she looked at the patent and says she does not see the off switch in the patent. They are supposed to put an off switch in everything, right? She did have, and she leans the other way on things.
Are you talking about the Soil Savers patent?
No,
Or no, okay.
no.
Gotcha.
On the Palantir Ginkgo, specifically sub company of Palantir, they have genetically engineered a nitrogen producing bacteria.
Right. Yeah.
And it does not have an off switch that she saw, and that
That's
my
actually
farmer
something.
said.
So the human-made bacteria and stuff like that, I'm really not concerned with
Really?
because my microbes are more gangster than they
Okay,
are.
okay. So that's what I wanted to hear is if that, and then if maybe Soil Savior
Would help with that, because they've put on 150 million acres already, and that's the flows, right?
See,
So-
and I would say though those aren't going to last. Like the human-made bacteria that are supposed to be nitrogen producing and stuff like that. There's so many. They're taking a hard sciences approach to something that's strictly soft sciences. That's the same thing that mainstream like commercial agriculture focuses on. Is that they take a hard sciences approach and they apply it to something that's soft sciences. So there's so many variables in nature. We can't account for all the variables. There's so many variables in the soil that if I make something that's man-made that isn't accounting for all these other variables, it's eventually going to be outcompeted by everything that knows about these variables and adjusts for these variables. Even with everything that we know about soil biology, it's a very small fraction. Like there's still a lot we don't understand. We just know what characters are involved in the process and kind of where they fit in. But the more we study, the more we realize like, oh, so bacteria, when there's few of them, they actually kind of take over a couple of different roles and they will go and derive a few different nutrients per bacteria. But as the numbers increase, they start to niche down at what they're best at. I'm like, oh, okay, some of these other bacteria, they're switchers. So they can thrive in facultative conditions or high oxygen conditions. Some nematodes will eat fungi, getting that nutrient cycling going. And then once all the fungi runs out, they eat your roots. So like we find out more and more, especially when it comes to the interaction between. So anything that they're going to like make and then release into the soils, I'm not too concerned with, because like the last ditch effort are the extremophiles in the Soil Saviors box. Those don't care. Like they're a honey badger. They don't care if it's a bear. It's still hungry. So yeah. Next question.
Going back to what you were saying about the noxious weeds and not running them,
I was gonna use that on an option. I have like lots of acres of lesbadisa in my.
That's high protein. What are you talking about?
Okay, so just cut and leave?
So lesbides, do you have any animals?
I don't yet.
Okay.
My
So what you could do, honestly, like there's a farmer in South Carolina. He's called the World Farm or the World Shepherd, and he specifically grows Lespedeza because it's a high protein input that he can give to his lambs 2 weeks earlier than what they normally would go forage at. So we can get them on lambs on pasture sooner, getting bigger weights sooner at that once you hit that 8-month period. So what you could do is you could just keep mowing it. So is it in the way? I would leave it. Well, tell him to, what can I say in public? Tell him to, yeah. I mean, like, did you plant it there? It's not your problem. It's not their problem either. I mean, if it's not in the way, that, I mean, again, going back to the yields, it's like I'm putting calories into a system that isn't producing me any calories, and in fact, it's taking care. It's like reducing calories in the long run. Do you plan on getting animals at all? Okay, then, hey, tell them I'm stockpiling hay. Shut up. That's what you're doing. In the meantime, until you get animals, you could mimic a grazing cycle. So you could go through and mow the fields or the pasture or the grass, whatever it may be. You can mow right before it hits the seed head. You keep the grass in a vegetative state, and it stays feeding those organisms longer. The reason you want to do it right before a seed head is because once plants in general produce seed, they've reproduced, and in their mind, their job is done for the season. So so they stop feeding the microbes. So if you can hit it right before seed head, you keep it in a vegetative state, keeping it pumping sugars into the soil longer, which is going to increase forage density and change the fungal to bacteria ratio in preparation for animals you plan to get in the future. Now, you'll notice when you mow, it'll take a longer time for that grass to grow back than when you graze. There's an enzyme in animals' mouths whenever they bite grass. It increases, it promotes growth in that particular bite spot. Your mower blade doesn't have that enzyme. So it's going to take a little bit longer. Does that answer your question? Okay. Honestly, I mean, I'm fine with fighting with bureaucrats, so it's like a little stress reliever for me.
Whatever on my land until I'm ready to deal with that.
You could totally lease it out, and you could even work out a deal so where you're practicing on other people's sheep, like practicing the grazing pattern on other people's sheep before you invest into your own sheep. That seems like an ideal learning opportunity because you can read all the books you want, you can take all the pasture walks you want, but you're not going to understand grazing until you're doing it yourself. I would. I mean, if you hay it, I would save it for when you get animals because that's fertility. By mowing it, you're keeping the fertility on your property. By haying it and selling it off and then selling it somewhere else, you're removing fertility on your property before you're in a position to produce more fertility. So for now, I would keep fertility on your property as much as possible. By baling it and keeping it and feeding it to future animals, that's keeping fertility on your property. That's around, you could use it for bedding. Yeah, you could use your chickens and use it for bedding. If you put a bagger on your mower and then lay it out in windrows to let it dry, then you could just use that as bedding. And they'll go through, scratch out the seeds, they'll eat all the seeds up, and then they'll poop on it, and then that's a fantastic compost ingredient or direct mulch in the garden. Was there any? I saw another hand. So, yeah. Okay, Bobby's there, and then we're going to.
I wasn't going to sell it.
So I first talked about
Yeah.
getting raw milk and helping on fruit trees. I have a peach tree with some leaf rust on it. The application of raw milk and diluting it with water 1-to-1, is that the ratio to use when mixing the two?
Yep, that's the correct ratio. Let me explain that real quick. So if you have any tree diseases or fungi issues or anything like that, and you don't have any ready compost, you can always spray the surface of your tree at the beginning of a sunny day with a mixture of 1 part raw milk or spoiled organic milk, 1 part water. And the lactobacillus within that milk will outcompete any of the fungal or bacterial infections on your tree. Sorry.
All good, thank you. And so on that, on watching it after, is there a reapplication after a certain amount of time? Or am I just looking for the disappearance of the rust from the leaf?
So the reapplication, the rust will eventually leave, but it depends on how attached it was before you applied, how long it's been there. Usually it starts coming on in the early spring. If you can catch it then, that's the absolute best. But so if you do it late in the summer, then reapplication is going to be necessary, especially after high dew events or like rain events, stuff like that, because the lactobacillus needs time to develop glues so they can glue themselves to the surface of the leaves. So if you think of it as like a military invasion, it's like first wave, we get a couple people left behind. Second wave, we have a foothold. The third wave, we completely conquered the area. So yeah, does that answer it? Cool.
My question is burning versus mowing. We've only been in Kansas a couple of years. We have a pasture. We've gone to classes about burning and they talk about how good it is. Do we just keep mowing? Because our plan is to get livestock on there and just keep mowing it and keeping it on there until we get livestock.
I would definitely mow until you get livestock. I can't think of a single application where I would burn a pasture over anything else, including like letting it go fallow. I would rather let it go fallow than burn and deal with it, because now I got high cyanide plants to deal with, and that accumulates. So yeah, I can't think of a single application where I would burn. Now, whenever they're suggesting burning, they're looking at natural patterns that would happen in Kansas prairies and everything. That's like few and far between. Wasn't like a yearly thing, and it was really the overall goal was that it happened after intensive grazing. So if you think of the buffalo that were going on during the lightning-caused wildfires, the buffalo were grazing perfectly. So we also had like 20 more feet of topsoil at the time and a lot more organic matter that could bounce off of and bounce back from that phosphorus dump into the atmosphere. We're not in those conditions anymore. And then also that happened far less frequently than what they burn pastures at right now. Also, we don't have the soil biology to take care and handle that phosphorus dump. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that answers my question.
It's just, they just don't know yet. I don't think that they're trying to intentionally give you bad advice. They're just, most reasons why people farm the way they farm is because that's the way their dad did it. That's the way their grandfather did it. That's the way all these other people did it. And the only improvements is in machinery. So, yeah.
And I'm just going to make a comment on the Lespedeza. I have two neighbors that have it on their property, and all they tell the county is they're working on it because they know the benefits of it.
Or, yeah, that's a good way. Or you could say it identifies as grass or something. I don't know. That works every other application. Yeah. There's a question right here, Bobby. Oh, and real quick, guys, keep in mind, you can ask me questions about anything. It doesn't have to be specifically about yields or abundance or anything like that.
When we started out with raising animals, we were kind of uneducated on making sure we don't overgraze and stuff like that. And we had quite a few cows, horses, that sort of thing that completely overgrazed a large part of our property. And there's just massive amounts of weeds that have grown in there at this point that just we can't seem to get under control. And I don't want to spray any type of chemicals and that sort of thing to be able to get rid of these things. We've tried using goats to be able to go in and try to clear that stuff out. But honestly, it's just, there's so much of it that we just can't get on top of it, including like in parts of our property, we've got ragweed that's 10, 12 feet tall. I mean, it's massive. Yeah. What would you recommend as far as trying to get past that with?
You have a couple of different options. So you still have animals?
We've got goats and one horse. We've gotten rid of all the cows and stuff because we just didn't have enough property and we weren't set up to rotate like we needed to.
Do you live in Kansas?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I would process all the goats and get sheep. You want to know why? How many times have you had to go search for those goats after they've gotten out of the fence? That's calories.
These ones are pretty easy to keep in.
Okay, that's good.
But I know what you mean. We've had lots of goats, and they are a pain.
Do you have to worm them?
Yes.
So that's another reason I would switch over to hair sheep. So keep in mind, everybody that I'm suggesting hair sheep or sheep to today, I'm always talking about hair sheep. They're going to be way more parasite resistant and they can handle our higher humidity. Goats thrive in arid conditions. We're in temperate conditions. So anytime you have high amounts of humidity or moisture, parasites are going to last longer, especially the goat's parasites. And then the wool sheep's parasites are going to last longer in the soil. They're not going to die as soon as something like a hair sheep's parasites will be. Also, hair sheep are way more resilient. They shed every spring, and they taste delicious. Yeah, I would pick hair sheep over beef any day. So all that being said is you have a couple of options. You could mow ahead of your goats, like one paddock size at a time, and then move your goats to on top of that mowed section. And then you could seed after immediately, or like you could seed the day before they're going to move in or move out. I'm sorry. So that way they can stomp the seeds into the soil and everything. Or another option is to roll out hay on top of it and then graze your goats on top of that. That's what I would go with, is getting a couple of round bales of hay, roll over those weeds, and then graze on top of it. And it might take, again, 2 to 3 applications, but at the end result is going to be far worth it. And then you can go back into horses and cows if you wanted to. Now, keep in mind, horses are difficult to graze correctly.
Yeah, we won't go horses again.
Okay.
We've got one horse that was a pet that we gave to my daughter for Christmas.
Yeah.
And that's the only one that's going to stay on our property anymore.
Okay. Okay. But horses are really good at maintaining walkways and pathways. So if you did like a Jeff Lawton laneway system where you come in a third of your property and then you put in like a walkway that's like navigable with a tractor, you can have your horses maintain that walkway, because horses will do something that most other animals won't do or don't do as well. And they'll like kneel down and reach their neck underneath that fence, keeping your electric fences clean from any debris. And then also, you don't care if the horses walk on that walkway too much, like create compaction, because you're driving on it anyway. It's like a designated compaction zone. You want your roads to be compacted.
Right. That makes sense.
So that's a route. Another one is you could just graze them along the perimeter of your property, and they're always cleaning off your fence line and everything. So horses can be done correctly. They're just a little tricky. And also, the biggest attitudes I've ever seen was horses that were stuck in there with calves. There were a lot of dead calves. Once we found out that was a no-go. It wasn't my farm. If somebody else's.
Okay.
Yeah. Next question.
How would you deal with poison ivy in both a wooded and field setting?
So how would I deal with poison ivy? I would just cut it down. I thankfully don't react to poison ivy, so it's not something I notice a whole lot. But you could also graze animals over it. Do you have sheep or cows? Do you have chickens? Do you have any animals? Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay. If you get a rash, you could always pee on it. Believe it or not, that sounds disgusting, but that's one of the best ways to fight poison ivy reactions. There's also a cream that you can put on before, like a preventative cream called Technu, Technu. But other than that, one thing you could do is just like cut it down, graze over the top of it, or change the overall biology. Because if you think of it, that is like a early successional plant. So if you increase the fungi in that particular spot, then it's going to not give conditions to that poison ivy. But sheep and goats love it. Yeah, maybe borrow neighbors or something. Oh, go ahead.
You were talking microclimates earlier and like planting a tree on the north side of the pond for like Lake Cross and stuff. Can you create that with like a swale, or does that not work?
Absolutely, yeah. You can create microclimates with swales. So if you think of springtime, it's usually a lot of water, right? That ditch part of the swale is going to be collecting water. And so let's say you have a late spring frost and you just had rains. Well, you have a little bit of a microclimate. That's one of Permapastures Farm's first videos. I was in front of a swale recording the microclimate that was occurring. There was frost on everything else except for what was near that ditch of the swale. So on the mound part of the swale, if things are susceptible to late spring frost, you could plant it closer towards the ditch part of the swale so they can take advantage of that high specific heat of the water.
Okay, what if you already have them? Can you do that to something that's already been planted, or do you just need to start over?
Like create a microclimate around something that's been planted?
Yeah.
Planting more plants around that is going to increase the temperature slightly. It's going to give a little bit more stability because if you look at the plants, there's just a lot of water in plants. Okay. So like if you look at the interior of a forest, that's going to get late spring frosts. It's going to be harder for late spring frost to occur on the interior of a forest than it will be on the edges of a forest.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then also you can use it to your benefit. You can put like a forested system. Let's say if your house, predominant wind blows this way, you could put a forested system between you and that predominant wind. And as those summer winds come through that forest, they cool down and then they hit your house with cooler temperature. That's Jeff Lawton's air conditioning system in Australia. He has a bamboo forest in the way of his predominant winds. They go through that bamboo forest. It cools down about, believe it or not, like 5 to 8 degrees, and then it hits his house. Really cool property.
That's cool. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any more?
There's one there, and then it was. Did you have one, or were you? Oh, my bad.
So my question's kind of a follow-up to that. So I watched a lot of YouTubes and read up, and they say for those late frosts, you can mitigate the blooming of many of your trees by doing deep mulch. So right now I've got like 18 inches of mulch, probably like 12 feet around my tree. And so it worked last year, or appeared to. I did straw last year, and this year I put deep mulch over the top of that. So I'm hoping to mitigate all. We've had a lot of late frosts here in Kansas. So you think it'll work?
Yeah, I think it would, especially if that mulch. So, word of caution with the mulch. Well, no, make sure nothing comes in contact with the trunk of the tree. Every landscape company I've ever seen mulch a tree always mulches it like a volcano instead of a donut. So always mulch it, like if you're looking down, it should look like a donut, not a mountain. So just word of caution with the mulching. And then as far as like mitigating spring, I would say gentle frost. Yeah, that should work. Another thing you could do is like if you know you have a late spring frost coming in that night, you could like right before those freezing temperatures hit, just kind of mist all of the blooms with water, which will encase it with ice, and then it'll thaw and protect it through that frost. And then once it thaws, it's typically good to go. Another thing you can do is what kills the blooms with a late spring frost isn't necessarily the freezing, it's the direct sun contact before it thaws. So what you could do is like put in a tree or put in a structure or something like that, so it doesn't get sunlight until maybe 10 a.m. or something like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes and no.
Sorry.
Okay.
Because of the soil temperature, it should stay the same longer, so I should get my blooms later, which my frost then like.
Oh, so you have later blooming plants. Okay. It depends on what the average of the weather has been before that event. That's what I would say. It kind of depends on how much of an outlier it would be. But other than that, yeah, I would say it probably would work. You good? Okay, sounds good. I'm such a disappointment. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Two-part question.
Okay.
Will your dad's bone sauce prevent squirrels? And when's the best time to apply that?
So, will my dad's bone sauce prevent squirrels, and when's the best time to apply that? He won't claim it'll prevent squirrels, but I will. I don't know why he won't claim it will prevent squirrels. Like we've had so many people test it and say, yeah, I have no more squirrels, but he still won't say it. So I will. Yeah, it prevents deer, rabbits, squirrels. And then the best time to apply it, I would say, is during the dormant season. So that way you're not getting it on the surface of any of your leaves or anything like that, because it will kill anything green. Not like where it's harming the plant. It's just they can't do photosynthesis after they get that concoction on them. It's not toxic by any means. It's just animal parts, a bunch of them. But yeah, fall, I would say, or fall to early or late winter. It's more of a convenience of application for you, really. Go ahead.
We have two locations in Coffee County where they're plowing in industrial waste from several states. They had permits. We talked to the county commissioners. Oh yeah, that's the state. It's not us. I'm on soil board. They come to me or us, and we don't know anything and don't have any authority over it. One lady wrote a editorial about the results of it. We have a rock layer, solid rock layer, where we put all this thousands of gallons of it hits that and goes to the stream. It turns your stream from a nice swim in your kids to a slimy stuff. And we're working, trying to mitigate that. But one of them's like 2 miles from my place, and there's one over by Lebo. She's the one that wrote the editorial about it. But they won't tell us what's in it. It comes from Arkansas, it comes from several different states. And what kind of industrial waste? I hear it's some of animal processing, but I don't know what. They have big tanks set up that you haul in semis and dump big trailer into probably 8 or 10 big tanks there. When it gets dry, they take a big 4-wheel drive tractor, go over 40 acres. Next week they go over the same 40 acres.
And they're burying it? How deep are they burying it?
They probably 2.5 foot is where, but they can't go much farther than that because there's solid limestone like a cement floor.
So, cool thing is that it can be fixed. They can be fixed in like as little as 6 months. So the downhill application of wherever they're burying that, even if it's a very, very slow leak downhill, because it is Coffee, Kansas. Coffee County, yeah. Is that right on the border of Oklahoma?
No.
Oh.
Just
okay. Yeah, cool. So even if, no matter how flat it is, there's still a slope, right? Water's always gonna go downhill. So in between or just downhill of that site, you could do like as deep of a trench as that soil will allow. So until you hit the rock layer, and then just fill that up with really good, high quality compost. And then the toxins will leach down from that event, and it'll get locked up again in the medium and long chain carbonic acids of the composting process. And then you're good to go. And then you could even apply it to the surface of where they're burying that. And then as it rains, it's going to leach down that good biology and sequester those toxins. Actual proof of this event was my parents cleaning up the biological or the contamination sites in North Carolina. What they used to do that was just good, healthy biology and that soil saviors product. So the archaea bacteria in that soil saviors product actually specifically destroys a lot of those toxic chemical compounds. Like it will actually eat glyphosate and break it down. It will break up and eat dioxins, which are like those forever chemicals and stuff. That's what this stuff prefers to eat. So that like a couple applications of that over that acreage could easily sequester all those toxins and make it null and void. Now, if it's industrial waste coming from Arkansas, the only two things that are coming to mind there is either wood pulp or chickens. And if it's chickens, I mean, thankfully that's neither one, I would say, if it's disposed of in too large of a scale, it's obviously gonna be bad. But if it's either one of those, it's still something we can easily manage. And if they're dumping a bunch of wood pulp, I'd be like, hey, can you just drop it off in my house? I can use that. It's liquefied.
Not a short-term thing. It's been for a year or more.
Then yeah, getting some sort of biological diaper on that thing somehow would be the best route to go. Do you know who owns the land downhill of it?
So my ex owned part of it downhill.
Well, there you go. There you go. Oh, two birds with one stone. Gotcha. Gotcha. But like again with those, it's kind of limited. You're probably not going to get government funding if they won't even like admit that they're doing it. And if they've got permission to do it, then I mean, really the only thing you could do is get like a contamination test done uphill of it, and then get a contamination test done downhill of it. Each one is going to be anywhere between $5,000 to $8,000, and that's probably going to be out of your own pocket. So there's that aspect too. Just so you can then prove to the government, like, hey, this is having negative consequences downhill. And then they may or may not write you a grant to fix it and be quiet about it. Once you start getting into soil remediation, that's when the bribes start coming in. Yeah, Dad was actually bribed, like tried to be bribed 3 times, and then it wasn't even, was it till he was talking, it was you or Dr. Will, and then one of y'all revealed to him, it's like, yeah, dummy, those were bribes. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh,
How many more do you want to do? We have.
I can go until the next class. I don't care.
Works for me. Most gangster permaculturalist in the world.
I'm either going to be talking about it up here or at the booth.
Less about soil, but what happens if you have Japanese beetles just year after year ruining our fruit trees?
So Japanese beetles, how to deal with Japanese beetles. Again, it is soil biology. So once you develop like a stable ecosystem, the predators, even if you know the predator or not, you don't need to know the specific component. You just need to set up the conditions for that component to come in. So if you have an abundance of Japanese beetles, if there are any predators for the Japanese beetles, it's going to attract them. Also, with the soil biology, if I take a seedling or sapling or whatever, and I make a compost extract, which is just knocking off the organisms from the compost and suspending them in water, and I spray down the soil, the seed, the sapling, the entire surface of it, those microbes are going to create like an armor over the surface of that plant. So if I have soil, like biologically complete soil, and I grow a plant in that soil, as it grows, it's going to be covered up and it's going to be protected by that network of good biology on the surface. If I look at that leaf under a microscope, I can't even see the surface of the leaf. I just see a network of bacteria and fungi just gluing themselves to that and then providing everything they need. Because there is, believe it or not, a nutrient trade-off up on the leaves as well. So trees are collecting nutrition through the wind as well as they are through the nets or the roots. They're both nets. One is just filtering the air, one is just filtering the ground. So there's naturally going to be biology to digest those nutrients from the air. Because typically those are inorganic compounds that are hitting the surface of a leaf. Think of like dust, rock dust, soils, things like that. So good biology, and it'll protect, it literally acts as like an armor on your plants. And then the Japanese beetle won't even have access to the surface of the plant. So the ones that are already there, I mean, the good biology is going to outcompete the Japanese beetles. Do you have any chickens or ducks? Okay. And they're in your orchard?
They are now.
Release your chickens and ducks a couple hours before sunset. So that way they'll give preference to what's moving as far as like what they're going to eat. They'll give preference to what's moving, and they'll leave your vegetables and plants and stuff like that alone. And then you're limiting them for a couple of hours because like sunset, they're going to be going back into the coop, which makes it easier for you on wrangling them. So just do it a couple hours before sunset, and then that'll put a big dent into your Japanese beetle population.
Let's do maybe 2 more, and then we'll reset for the next class.
Yeah, actually, all I was going to say is we had an issue with Japanese beetles as well, and we just did a Japanese beetle trap attached to a PVC pipe, and the chickens just stand there all day long and eat it. And it's great, yeah.
That's an awesome idea.
One final question for William. Take it. After this, William is literally right there.
I'm just going to take advantage while I can so everybody can.
Just the Yeoman's plow. I actually know somebody that has one. Again, Kansas with its clay and it's a building site, so there's compaction. If I were to use that and it tears up big clumps of clay, because again, my goal is to get that soil biology so that I can plant gardens.
Yeah. So are you asking if you should?
Yes, versus I've got a tiller just tilling it
I'll
up.
probably do a.
Even if I didn't have compaction, I'd still be using a yeoman's plow if I had access to it, because I'm just immediately allowing the water to penetrate further and deeper every rain event. So the calculation for a yeoman's plow, if you're hitting like larger scale pastures and everything, is downhill 2% slope towards the ridge line, which in Kansas, like you want to go instead of perfectly on contour, just downhill at a 2% slope. And that will do amazing wonders on your property. It'll be way more drought resilient. You'll have better like soil, root depth. You'll have better like root depth. On perennial species, there's no lower limit to how deep roots can go. It's literally just the first compaction layer over 300 PSI. Yeah. All right.
All right, folks. I'll ask the last question. How can people find out more about I almost said your dad's channel, about the permaculture consultant, and where will you be the rest of this weekend?
The rest of this weekend, I'll be here. I'm at that tent right there in the middle with the blue top with nothing on the table. That's me. I will have more stuff on the table, just not right now. And you can find me at the Permaculture Consultant on YouTube. Just on YouTube, really. And if you need to contact me, it's the permacultureconsultant@gmail.com. Super low tech over here. I'm really good at growing food and pretty much crap at everything else. So no website, none of that.
All right, guys. So under the Hawaii laser-proof blue tent right over here for the rest of the weekend. Don't forget, he will be up on stage tomorrow morning as well, giving another class. So let's give it up for William Bond.
Thank you, guys.
All right, guys, next class will be at 3 o'clock. It'll be Ginger Williams, formerly from My Honey's Kitchen. Now she is Sweet Boutique on the Square, talking about how to use your garden surplus, all that extra zucchini and all that extra cucumber and all that sort of stuff. In the meantime, please head over, get some prize tickets, support Midwest Preparedness. That's how we are able to do this, is by selling those tickets to pay for the campground, pay for all the things you see. So have a good time. We'll see you at 3.